the deconverted man. This is gonna be a quick one, maybe.
Arguing for atheism for a long time. He does a lot of debates, and I even debated him on the resurrection on Pints with Aquinas not too long ago. One of Dillahunty's stock arguments he uses to discredit miracles like the resurrection is this statement: claims are not evidence.
I'm not here to defend Dillahunty. I don't care. He can defend himself. His arguments will stand or fail on their own merits. The way I would go after miracles is different than what he's done. But I do feel the need to chime in, as useless as that might be, because I'm just one tiny voice. Uh, Claims are not evidence. That's just not how those words work. I know you want to refute this idea that claims are evidence. You want to say that, no, that is true. Claims are evidence. But that's not how those words work.
He basically says there's no evidence for Jesus' resurrection because all the purported evidence for it are merely claims that Jesus rose from the dead.
It's actually far worse than that. They're not even really direct claims either. They're written uh, at the earliest writings we have are several years after the events. Now, I try to not make too big of a deal with how long of a gap there is between the event and the writing down of that event, because we know that with Mormonism, it didn't take that long for Joseph Smith to write down his nonsense and to get other people to believe in that nonsense. So the time to write some ideas down for me is somewhat of a side note, but the greater the distance, then the more problems you are going to incur because of that. So you have a great gap of time between the supposed event and the earliest writings that we actually have, which have been questioned. And so then you also have the problem of canonization, and then you have the problem of missing books. But the biggest problem of all when it comes to any and all miracles is we do not have a single example of a miracle that we can point to as reference to say that's a miracle that we know about for today. Now we know miracles are a thing that can happen. Therefore, we can assume that they happened in the past. Unless and until we have a modern example of a miracle that has been documented, tested, demonstrably demonstrated to be a miracle, we should not think that miracles could have happened in the past. Else, madness ensues because there would be no way to tell the difference between a fake miracle in the past and an actual miracle in the past without some sort of extra methodology to do that. And maybe you want to claim that all miracle claims in the past are legitimate and that the ones that don't follow your religion are just demons or devils messing around. But then there's a completely different problem if you do that because you have no methodology to deduce what the good miracles are and what the evil miracles are, other than just assert that, of course, your religion has the good miracles and the other religions have the bad miracles. And of course, all the religions can assert the same about you. And then there's still no way to differentiate between the good miracles, the bad miracles, the legitimate and illegitimate miracles. So you need a demonstrable demonstration of a miracle. How does one identify a miracle in the first place? That's what's lacking that you don't have. In addition to that, these statements written in this old document are just that. Somebody somewhere wrote it down. We don't know if that person personally believed in it or not. Maybe they were paid to do it. I have no idea. Neither do you. But even if they did believe in it, that doesn't make that stuff true. Maybe the story changed by the time it got to them. That's very possible. That can happen very quickly. Doesn't take years for that to happen, but they did have years for it to happen. So that's another problem that you have beyond just demonstrating that miracles are even a thing in the first place. But all of this is at best hearsay, and I wouldn't even put it at the same level as claims. But it is not in and of itself evidence for anything other than somebody somewhere wrote down what somebody wanted them to write down or that they wanted to write down themselves. And we don't know if that something actually occurred or if they're making it up or if somebody's paying them to write it or what. We have no idea. We don't know. And for most things that are old, we put that into categories. Either we go, okay, well, it's history because it's old, but okay, is it history that we think could have happened? Or is it history that we call mythology because it contains supernatural elements? And like it or not, the Bible falls into mythology because it contains supernatural elements. The parts of it that are not mystical or magical or paranormal or spiritual or supernatural, those could have happened in history. You can't construct a coherent timeline to show when they would have happened, but nonetheless, they might have happened. You must demonstrate that they did happen. And you don't have anything that you can do that by because you don't have enough archaeological evidence to show that these events happened. And it does no good to say, but we wouldn't have archaeological evidence for this or that event. Well, yeah, but you also don't have archaeological evidence for many events that you should have archaeological evidence for. So that's another problem. Nobody knows where the tomb is, yet lots of people have claimed to have that location. Where was Jesus born? Well, lots of people have claims about that. Was the city, why was he was born in Bethlehem, then he moved to Nazareth and back and forth, or was he born in Nazareth? That's disputed. Did they just place him in Bethlehem so that he could, be born where he was supposed to be born? And is that an extrapolation that was just put in later? Because there's questions about either about Bethlehem being even a thing, or it might be questions about Nazareth. I always get the two mixed up, but there was questions about the legitimacy of the location itself in archaeology. So you guys have all your work cut out for you, even establishing some basic facts about these stories, let alone the supernatural claims, which you have no way to demonstrate via history that those things happened. And it doesn't matter how many people were recorded that miracles happened and wrote down about it. We would still have to be skeptical of those claims today because we don't have any current documentation of miracle events. That's what's going on here. As far as claims being evidence go, no, that's not how the words work. It's not that difficult to figure that out. A Google search will show you the difference between claims and evidence.
And those claims by themselves are not evidence. The first time I saw Dillahunty use this approach was when he debated Mike Winger on the resurrection.
So what is it that makes something convincing? Or what is it that should make something reasonably convincing? Well, you have to evaluate the claim and then the evidence for the claim. And one of the things that Mike consistently did as he was talking was say, this is evidence, this is evidence, this is fact, this is evidence, when virtually everything that he was talking about at some level is the claim and not the evidence for it, right up to the end where he says, oh, well, this is the evidence for the resurrection. No, these are the claims about a resurrection. The evidence for the resurrection is something else other than a whole bunch of people say it, they saw it happen, or had an experience afterward.
A few weeks ago, Dillahunty released a video defending his assertion that claims are not evidence because, according to him, even some atheists have criticized him on this point. So let me say what I think Dillahunty is saying, why he's wrong, and I'll go through a few clips from this recent video on this matter. So in order to show what's wrong with Dillahunty's claim, we need to understand what a claim is and what evidence is. First, what is evidence? Evidence is anything that makes a statement more likely to be true.
Okay, so he's already off book because he's using his own version of evidence. Now, appealing to the dictionary is a logical fallacy. And when that logical fallacy occurs if and when you say, because the dictionary says the word is X, that's what it really is in reality. Typically, dictionaries give multiple definitions for any given word. And to do nothing more than appeal to a dictionary to say that's what the word has to be would be fallacious because there's multiple meanings. But in this case, what we have is looking at the multiple meanings of the word evidence, which really there's only a couple on Google, but you could find some more dictionaries, and you could use comparative text analysis on this word to see whether or not you can make a case for it or not. Do note the lack of any dictionary cited in his description or in the video itself. So nothing being cited for what you mean by evidence. You are saying what you think evidence means, not what we collectively might see evidence as being closer to. So if we look at just Google alone and we said that's our standard, it's not a great standard, but it's going to be our standard for now. And we said, okay, here's from dictionaries from Oxford Languages. Here's what Google says evidence is. The available body of facts or information indicating whether or not a belief or proposition is true or valid. That's the noun. And then the verb, to be or show evidence of. Well, obviously, we're not talking about the verb, so we exclude that. And maybe we could hit see more and see if it has, if the expanded definitions of it would be closer. In law, evidence means something a little bit different. Obviously, we're not using that version of evidence. Signs or indications of something. Again, it seems like we're not really using that in this case. So we can then narrow down fairly certainly to the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true and valid. Okay, now define claims. Right? So, and here we go. Let's do more. Okay, this state or assert that something is the case, typically without providing evidence or proof. He claimed he came from a wealthy, educated family. That's one thing. Assert that someone has gained or achieved. That was I strike a claim. Okay, obviously we're not using that. Formally request or demand that says one owes is earned something. I claim this as mine. Obviously we're not using that version of claim. Make or demand of money. Not using that version of claim. A call for someone's notice of what he claimed his attention. Obviously, we're not using that version of claim. Cause the loss of somebody's life. Obviously, we're not using that. He claimed a life. We're not using that version of claim. And then the nouns, essentially assertion of truth of something typically that is disputed or in doubt. He dodged the claim that he had CIA links. And then the rest are not considered because we're definitely not using those versions of claims. So basically we're reduced to two possible things that claim could be: an assertion of truth as something typically that's disputed or in doubt, and or asserting that something is true without evidence or proof. That's what a claim is seen as, by and large, by at least the definition of the Oxford Language Dictionary here. Now, if you wanted to do a wide-scale survey of what people think evidence and claims are or mean, you could do that. But I think that this usually shows that this is what people see the word as or understood the word to be. And you're not saying that is what it is for sure because you want to avoid the appeal to definition, but you're saying that this seems to be a reasonable definition. If you want to show other definitions, great. And if you want to compare and contrast those, also great. So until you do that, you've got nothing but hot air. Okay, that's really it for what I wanted to do with this video, believe it or not, because the rest I don't care about. But there is one, well, there is one final thing I wanted to do, and that is to look at what he posted in his comment section and to comment briefly on this logical fallacy, which is poisoning the well and irrelevancy. He says, an addendum to the video. Matt accepts transgender ideology, so the mere claim a man is a woman is not just evidence, it's proof of the extraordinary claim that a person with a penis is a woman. And then he gives a link for that. So, this is a completely irrelevant and also a potential poisoning of the well. Whether or not Matt Dillahunty accepts anything that is or isn't incoherent, if you think that this ideology is incoherent, is irrelevant in full. Matt could believe that the earth is flat. That doesn't matter. Matt could adopt the position that Jesus was actually the flying spaghetti monster and was eaten by his disciples, and that's why he didn't come back to life. That incoherent idea would still be irrelevant to his claims about the idea of claims. This is nothing more than an attempt at poisoning the well and possible red herring. And also being a hypocrite, if you're trying to say that Matt's being a hypocrite, is not a logical fallacy. There you go. That's all I got to say on this. Good night, everybody. Whee!